Welcome to the Horror Next Door. This is all the horror movies we watched in October 2023. Links to our Letterboxd accounts are in the description box below. If you like this video, would you kindly subscribe?
VHS 85, which was watched on Shudder. Certainly not disappointed by this as far as the VHS films go. I think the last couple of releases have been pretty decent. Although I wasn't a huge fan of the way that Total Copy ended, for the most part it was interesting, and I loved the way that No Wake was split up and more became revealed throughout the film. I think Dreamkill was my favorite of all the shorts. God of Death and the short with the woman on stage doing a virtual reality thing, I don't remember the name of that one, I'm sorry, were lacking a little bit for me, but I definitely will keep watching these movies. I think they're very fun, and as I always say, there's something for everyone in anthology films, so I do definitely recommend this, especially if you like the prior VHS films.
So for me personally, I think all of the VHS movies are kind of hit or miss for me. There's always at least one segment in there that I really like, and there's at least one that I really don't like. So overall, I always find the movies just to be kind of average. We try not to spoil anything from any of the movies that we talk about here in this series, but the thing that I am going to spoil is just more of an aspect in the movie than like a plot point or a twist in the film or anything like that. So if you're not interested, skip to the next film. But if you're still here, let's go. One of the main things that I really liked about this movie is there are two segments in this particular VHS that are kind of a continuation of one another. There is a segment earlier in the film that I actually really liked. I thought it was really cool. It kind of just ends suddenly. It gets to this point where you're like, okay, things have already gone off the rails. This is awesome. And now we're going to progress the story, in this direction. But then it just ends. And I'm like, man, I really hope they continue this because I kind of want to see where that was going to go. And then sure enough, 2 segments later or 3 segments later, it does continue. Like I said, I'm really not spoiling anything that happens. I'm just kind of giving away the fact that there's 2 segments that line up with one another story-wise. So I really thought that was cool. I think compared to the last couple of VHS movies, I think this one is probably one of the best. I will say, though, that I was a little disappointed by David Bruckner's segment. His segment is actually the wraparound story that takes place throughout the film. Obviously, towards the end of the movie, things progress and it gets pretty weird and freaky, but I guess I was just expecting a little bit more from his segment. I still had a lot of fun with this movie overall, and like I said, I think out of the last maybe 3 or 4 VHS films, this is probably the best one.
Friday the 13th, Part 6, Jason Lived, which was watched on Max. This was October, Friday the 13th, woohoo! So of course, a Friday the 13th film needed to be watched to celebrate such a wonderful occasion. I picked Jason Lives because it seems like it's a lot of people's favorite as far as all the sequels are concerned, or really the whole franchise. I just see a lot of people say this is their favorite. I also really like CJ Graham a lot from Highway to Hell, where he plays Hell Cop, and I just didn't remember a whole lot about this movie. It also has Tom Matthews from Return of the Living Dead 1 and 2. I just wanted to see this again. It was actually a lot more humorous than I remembered or expected, but I enjoyed rewatching it. I think that this is probably one of the most thought out and high quality Friday the 13th sequels, so I can see why a lot of people enjoy it. I certainly recommend the movie. I have said this a bunch of times, so I'm sorry to say it again really quickly, but I have a really hard time keeping all the Friday the 13th movies straight. I confuse them all the time. This one does stand out, though, not as much as like Part 2, which is my favorite of all of them, but I do see why it's one of the more widely appreciated sequels.
You can't go through an actual Friday the 13th and not watch a Friday the 13th movie. Are you crazy? This time around, we watched Friday the 13th Part 6. I don't know if I've said this before on the channel, but I believe if I had to pick a number 1 favorite Friday the 13th film, it would probably be Part 6. I love this movie. I think it's great. I love the blend of humor with the horror. And one of the things that I do like about the humor and the horror is that they never blended the humor with Jason. Jason was always taken seriously, and he was always just on a murderous rampage. There wasn't some scene in the movie where he had ridiculous glasses on or some dumb shit. My favorite scene would probably be the RV scene, just everything that happens in the back of the RV with Jason, and then Court just being oblivious that Jason's even there. And then obviously the RV crashing and the fire and everything. That is just awesome, awesome scene. Even when I was a child and watching these movies, I always just thought that RV scene was so cool. Jason is a badass. And if you haven't seen this movie, what are you doing? Check it out.
Return of the Living Dead Part 2, which was watched on Tubi. I have been wanting to rewatch this movie for such a long time. I believe that I rented it and watched it for the first time back in the very, very early days of having Netflix and getting it on a disc. I just didn't remember a whole lot about it other than a couple of standout moments or scenes. I did remember that James Karen and Tom Matthews returned and pretty much played the same characters. I also remember that Dana Ashbrook from Twin Peaks and a handful of other things that probably aren't very well known was in this because I really like him. I actually had a crush on him when I was little, and he was in this fucking Tony Danza movie called She's Out of Control, and it was ridiculous. But anyway, I digress. Although this movie doesn't live anywhere near up to Return of the Living Dead, it was a fun watch. There were parts that were so over the top and so ridiculous that it was more eye-rolling than laugh out loud. I was very entertained when they literally repeated same lines from the first movie because I've seen the first movie so many times and I love it so much. So those might have actually been my favorite parts of this, but overall I do recommend it. Just know that it does not compare to the first, and I actually like Return of the Living Dead Part 3 more than this. I might be completely alone in that, but it is what it is.
I understand that the original Return of the Living Dead had some comedic elements to it, but it wasn't over the top comedic is the best way I can kind of put it. I will say that I remember it being worse in my memory, and watching it again recently, I think I enjoyed it more this time around than I did back in 2006 when I rented it. At the end of the day, I'm not a fan of it. Return of the Living Dead 1 is where it's at. And honestly, I'd rather watch Return of the Living Dead 3 over this one.
Autumn Road from 2021, which was watched on Tubi. Always scouring Tubi for Halloween movies, have so many saved up. This October, I simply started going through some of them, knowing that many of them probably weren't going to be that great. However, I was pleasantly surprised with this one. First of all, it has a really cool poster. It had amazing Halloween atmosphere. It just felt like autumn. It also had some strange plot points and character behaviors that were intriguing to me. I actually ended up liking this a lot more than I thought I was going to. No, it is not perfect, but I do feel like it was made with heart and actual effort behind it. Might I add that Riley Cusick not only directed this, he also wrote it and played twins in the film. I think I might even remember reading a review that said he played 3 characters in this. I just don't recall that at the moment. Regardless, I hope he continues making movies, and I would recommend this. Just don't go in expecting some epic, amazing John Carpenter's Halloween classic or anything, and you won't be disappointed.
Saw from 2004, which I watched on my Blu-ray copy. So leading up to the release of Saw X, I was kind of in the mood to rewatch the entire Saw franchise, except for Spiral. Just never really got around to it, partly due to the fact that I kind of had this notion in my head the entire month of September that Saw X doesn't come out until October. So I got until October to watch these movies. Completely forgot the fact that Lionsgate pushed the release of Saw back like 2 weeks into September because Exorcist Believer picked the same release date as Saw X. In my opinion, they should have held firm and just came out the same day. But whatever. Needless to say, Saw X kind of snuck up on me a little bit. I was busy making videos and things, and then all of a sudden, boom, Saw X is coming out. So now that Saw X has released, I'm slowly making my way through the series. The original Saw, the one that started it all. This movie is a classic. I remember seeing this in the theaters back in 2004. I remember hearing about it online and honestly not really knowing very much about it. So I just went and saw it, and it was awesome. And just the way that it ended and everything, I do think the ending of this movie is probably in top 10 twist endings for a horror film in history. But I love this movie. It's a 5 out of 5. If you haven't seen it, what the heck are you doing? Crawl out from the rock you've been under and check it out.
The Witching season from 2015, which I also watched on Tubi, and also has a frickin' sweet poster. I did not realize until I started playing this that I actually had already seen it. I realized it pretty quickly when the first short started. This is an anthology film, but despite that, I still finished watching it. I actually really enjoyed it. I think the majority of the shorts are creative and fun. There are some slight cliches and maybe some budgetary limitations, but that didn't stop me from enjoying this at all. The transitions in between the short films are peak Halloween vibes. I really, really liked this a lot and would recommend it. Don't go into this thinking, oh, it's an anthology. This is going to be as amazing as Trick or Treat. But yes, this did exceed my expectations, especially considering it was something I had already seen.
Saw 2 from 2005, which I watched on my Blu-ray copy. Saw 2 is probably my favorite Saw film of the entire franchise. And I think it's literally just because of the fact that these people wake up in a house and they're trapped in this house, and every room that they go to, there's a different trap in there and everything. And I really thought the idea of it being a house with traps in it was really cool and really clever. And also just the way that they tie it into the first film at the end of the movie, I thought that was really cool. And then you have the twist with the videotape stuff. I'm trying not to reveal too much if you haven't seen this film. Like I said, not trying to spoil it for you. If you are one of those people that don't watch the Saw movies because, oh, it's just gore for the sake of gore. I hear a lot of people always say that they're just too gory. There's nothing else to it. It's just gore. I beg you, go watch them. Yes, there's gore, but it's not gore for the sake of gore. There is an awesome story going on. There's awesome twists at the end. You are missing out, my friend.
The Exorcist Believer, which was watched in the theater. While I do firmly believe that the trailer made it look more appealing to me personally than the actual film ended up being for me personally, I also think that people are really blowing out of proportion how bad this supposedly is. I still need to rewatch or completely sit through The Exorcist III, which I know everyone says is really good. But unless I'm mistaken, all of the other sequels, shows, and whatever other weird crap they have tried to do with The Exorcist since the original film have not been good. I sort of think people have an automatic bias against David Gordon Green because so many people hated Halloween Ends, and a lot of people hated all three of the newer Halloween films that he did. And I also think people have a bias against this film because of how epic the original is. I understand that the ways they used Ellen Burstyn and Linda Blair were underwhelming, but I think it's cool that they both came back at all because neither of them had to. I mean, obviously it was probably a money thing, but no matter the reason, it was cool to see them pop in. I don't think I'm alone when I say that I actually enjoyed a lot of what happened before the whole exorcism section of the movie more than the exorcism parts. Yes, this is just very middle of the road for me. I didn't think it was amazing, but there were a couple of parts that legitimately were disturbing, and I think both of those little girls, they did an extremely good job. The makeup was cool. I don't know, I guess a lot of the things that people are complaining about about with this film don't bother me. I would very loosely recommend it. Obviously, if you know you're going to hate it, there's no point in watching it. Again, it's nothing amazing, but I'm fine with it. It's just a whatever movie to me. I probably wouldn't watch it again. I think it's worth watching once. That's just my personal opinion. Don't come for me. Thanks.
Friday the 13th, Part 4, the final chapter, from 1984, which I watched on Max. So I went over to my buddy's house on Saturday the 14th and came to the realization that he did not watch a Friday the 13th movie on Friday the 13th. And I was like, dude, what's your problem? You need to watch one. As we sat there on a Saturday night, I just turned on Max and put on Friday the 13th, Part 4. It was one of those situations where we kind of watched it, kind of talked, kind of watched it, kind of talked, kind of deals. We did get through the entire thing, and we did see all the best scenes, obviously, in their glory. I really just like Ted White's portrayal of Jason in this movie. I think he is a badass, and he just seems pissed off in this movie. Jason just seems so pissed, and I always just love that scene where he comes smashing through the front door of the cabin. It's just so cool. I love it. But this movie rocks, and you need to check it out. What are you doing?
Terrifier 2 from 2022, which I watched on my Blu-ray. Have certainly talked about the Terrifier films and Art the Clown more than enough on this channel in the past. I love everything about them. There is just a certain tone, and I think maybe Damien Leone was going for this when he made this. It's elevated above the first one. Obviously because we get a lot more character development with Sienna's character. That's not to say that this is a film of deep philosophical substance or anything. It's still a gory slasher fest that's a blast. I'm just trying to explain why there's something about this that gets stuck in my head. It was just a random day close to mid-October, and I just wanted to watch it again. I think this is the fourth or maybe even fifth time I've watched this movie since I saw it in the theater in October 2022. So obviously there's something I like about it. I finally just bumped it up to 5 stars and admitted to myself I'm obsessed. So I definitely do very highly recommend this movie.
Saw 3 from 2006, which I watched on my Blu-ray copy. When I kind of look at the Saw series as a whole, I always kind of see the first 3 Saw movies as not only the best Saw movies, but I also kind of look at them as the Jigsaw trilogy, so to speak. And then when you get to 4, 5, and 6, and I guess even 7, it's kind of like the Hoffman era of the series. But Saw 3 is such an awesome movie. One of my favorite scenes in the entire movie, and almost in the entire series, really, is the scene in this movie where they do a little brain surgery on Jigsaw. It's not even a trap, and it's one of the just realistic, nastiest scenes I've ever seen. It's really like how they describe it in the opening of Saw 4 is like a backdoor brain surgery. The fact that she's using power drill and some kind of saw thing that you would use to like grind metal and shit, like it is gnarly as shit, and I love it. I also think that Shawnee Smith does a wonderful job in this movie, and the fact that the series is still going to this day, even though people are not alive anymore, is just awesome. But I love Saw 3. Go check it out.
After Midnight from 2019, which is watched on Tubi. Side note, I'm just now realizing that I haven't been saying the release year of some of the films I've been discussing, so apologies for that. I have been wanting to see After Midnight for quite some time. I thought the trailer looked interesting, and I've come to appreciate Jeremy Gardner as an actor, as well as Brea Grant, and they are the leads in this film, so of course I wanted to watch it. I was just very curious as to whether this beast monster thing that Hank, the main character, was seeing was in his his mind or not, because the beast monster thing came when his girlfriend left him. I don't want to spoil anything, but the ending definitely made it worth watching. Not that nothing else did, because I did like the movie. It's pretty lean at 83 minutes, so it's not too much of a time investment. I guess there were just parts where I felt like it dragged a teeny bit, but despite this, I would recommend the film. Just know that it's not action-packed, crazy gore, stuff like that. I almost want to say it's just mostly about loneliness, this couple's relationship, and Hank's struggles. So if you're not into more character-driven horror, maybe skip this one or watch a bit of it and then fast forward to the end. Devil's Night from 2015, which was watched on Tubi. I mean, I sort of had a not that great feeling about this movie when I saw the poster art, but I watched it anyway. I can tell you right now I didn't end up paying full attention to it because it just was not good. It's a bunch of guys that are supposed to be high schoolers, but they're definitely way too old to pull high school age off. I think it would have been better if they just had these characters set as being in college. All the characters were jerks, so you kind of just wanted bad things to happen to them, and then when they do, it's not that exciting or climactic, so I don't recommend this movie. It didn't even really feel all that Halloween-y to me either.
Faceless from 1988, which I watched on Blu-ray. So if you watch the Halloween fun video that we posted for this year, which if you haven't, you should go check it out immediately. It's awesome. Over an hour of just Halloween shopping and Halloween hunting. But in that video, I mentioned towards the end that I was invited by a friend to go on a pumpkin trail. Well, on that very same night after the pumpkin trail, we watched a horror film. This particular friend of mine owns a huge collection of movies. So he kind of picked out some movies, had me pick. I picked this, Faceless, 1988. Never seen it, first time watch. I must say this movie was pretty good. I believe this was a French horror production type thing. So some of the people in the movie are speaking English, but then other ones are speaking French and their voices don't match up to the English words that are coming out of their mouth. I'm kind of used to that watching certain Italian movies and stuff, so that doesn't bother me. If you haven't seen this movie before or haven't heard of it before, I'll just try to give you a little gist of what's going on. There's way more to this movie than what I'm about to tell you. I'm just going to give you the teeny little synopsis. But basically, there's this doctor, and he's kind of a psychopath, but his sister's face is just horribly disfigured after a vengeful woman tries to throw some kind of acid or something on the doctor, and she misses and hits his sister. Basically, the entire plot of the movie is them trying to find a new woman's face that they could remove and put on his sister's face, sort of like a face swap, so to speak, so that way she doesn't have to be horribly disfigured anymore. There's way more going on than what I just told you, but that's sort of the gist of things. It's ridiculous, but it's ridiculously awesome, and there's a lot of crazy gore. Obviously, it's 1988, so some of the gore isn't the best, but honestly, some of it's actually pretty effective if you just kind of put yourself in the mindset of, it's the late 80s, and this probably was a low-budget production. So if you kind of put yourself in that mindset, the gore is actually pretty effective in some spots. Pretty sick, pretty damn sick. So if you haven't seen this movie and you are into gory flicks, you're probably going to like this one. Even if you don't like gory flicks and you just want to watch some messed up movie, check this one out.
Mr. Hush from 2010, which was watched on Tubi, and was also supposed to be a Halloween movie, but barely passes as that. Basically, the main character answers the door to what he thinks is going to be a trick-or-treater, and it turns out to be Mr. Hush, who is one of the stupidest, lamest bad guys or villains or antagonists or whatever you want to call him that I've ever freaking seen. The main actor left a lot to be desired skill-wise, which was actually quite entertaining at some points. In fact, I would say I think every actor in this film left a lot to be desired skills-wise. The acting was so stilted, and some of the dialogue and the way this was written was absurd. For that reason alone, I didn't give it a half a star. This whole movie hinges on Mr. Hush. It's the title of the frickin' movie. And when he's not a good character, when he's not interesting, when he's not scary, when he's not anything except kind of annoying, there's absolutely no engagement other than it's kind of bad. So it's appealing in the this is entertaining because it's bad and I'm enjoying scoffing and laughing at it, but I wouldn't recommend it unless you're in the mood to watch something like that. If you're inebriated in some way or with a bunch of friends or it's very late at night and you're sleepy, things of that nature would be the only way or reason that I would recommend this. Saw 3D from 2010. I know that whatever I watched it on, it was about to expire, and I didn't remember it very well, but I knew it was the one with Chester Bennington in it, and I just wanted to see it again. Although it is not one of my very top favorite Saw films, I did still have a good time rewatching this. I like pretty much all of the Saw films, except for Spiral, as you know, and Jigsaw is meh. I had just seen Saw X in the theater, and I would really like to rewatch all of the Saw films, but this was just the one that I chose at the time. I probably am biased because I think a lot of people hate the majority of the Saw sequels, but I do recommend it.
Five Nights at Freddy's from 2023, which I watched on Peacock. So on another random night in October, I was invited by a coworker to go carve pumpkins. So of course I went because why not carve pumpkins? Afterwards, we watched Five Nights at Freddy's, which was newly released, I think, that same weekend that I went to carve the pumpkins. So, full disclosure, I have never played any of the Five Nights at Freddy's video games. I really don't know anything about them other than the fact that it's, you know, like a Chuck E. Cheese type scenario and there's evil animatronics. I don't know literally anything else about Five Nights at Freddy's. So is this a good movie based on a video game? I can't answer that question, but what I can say is it a good movie or not? Yes, it is a good movie. It's not the best movie, but it is a good movie. I heard a lot of people online saying that the movie was confusing, which I did not find it confusing at all. I actually kind of thought that they kind of beat some things to death where it was like, we get it. I get it. You don't need to keep repeating yourself. I don't understand how some people could say it's confusing. So I know it also gets a comparison to Willy's Wonderland, which came out a few years ago. I think the best way I could sum it up is if you want to watch a over-the-top, ridiculous kind of gore fest of a movie with very little story, then go watch Willy's Wonderland. But if you want to watch a movie that has more story going on and a little less gore and a little less ridiculous animatronic stuff, Five Nights at Freddy's is your pick. I think my only complaint about this movie is there was really only one scene in the entire movie where the animatronics are going around and being evil and trying to do evil stuff. That particular scene was awesome and was one of my favorite scenes in the film, but I guess I kind of felt like there should have been more of that. I also kind of predicted the reveal at the end of the movie. I kind of think it's a little obvious if you think about it, but I still had fun with this movie though, and I would recommend it.
Berkshire County from 2014, which was also watched on Tubi. This is another movie that I added because it was a Halloween film. On Tubi, it's actually called Tormented. I did not understand the purpose of what occurred to the main babysitter character girl at the beginning of this film. I guess maybe it was just a way to tie the abusive asshole that was involved with tormenting her into the story later. That probably could have been done in a slightly better manner, but the whole situation with this is that she goes to babysit in an isolated mansion on Halloween night, and a boy comes to the door to trick or treat in a pig mask, and then she and the two kids she's babysitting end up being tormented by actually 3 people wearing pig masks. So it wasn't as bad as I expected, but it wasn't really good either. And the house they filmed this in was so freaking weird. I couldn't even even figure out if it was a real house and it was designed that way, or if they made some kind of set, or if it was a combination of both. But it was a very weird setting. Could have also done without the ridiculous ending in the hospital. I think they should have just ended it before that. Very, very loosely recommend this movie. It's definitely not the worst home invasion type movie I've ever seen, but it's most certainly not the best either. Just go into this with caution if you're thinking about watching it. SlashFM from 2022, which was also watched on Tubi. This is another Halloween anthology film. Doesn't really tie the horror shorts together in any way other than having a radio DJ called Count Slashula talking in between them. There is a lot of awesome footage of Halloween decor and autumnal ambience with colorful leaves and trees and decorated houses and things like that interspersed between the stories as well. And I really liked that stuff a lot. So as with any anthology film, of course, there's going to be good ones and bad ones. The quality varies greatly. The ratio varies a lot. It's clear that these films were not created necessarily to be a part of the same anthology film. I haven't researched it, but I sort of wonder if perhaps the filmmakers advertised, hey, we're making a Halloween anthology, submit your films, and then they sort of picked some or something. I don't really know how it happened, but despite all of this, you either like the short or you don't. Overall, I enjoyed watching this, so I do recommend it. And because I liked SlashFM, I also watched SlashFM II from 2023 on Tubi. I wouldn't say I like either of them more than the other. I think the quality went up a little bit with this one. The footage of the Halloween lights and decorations and the autumn vibes and stuff was in this one more, if I remember correctly. I do recommend this, but again, I'll compare it to Trick or Treat. Don't expect some epic, amazing thing that geniusly weaves all of these stories together. These are just random horror shorts that have been combined into 80-something minute runtimes. You could do worse, that's for sure. And I did feel Halloween feels watching these, so thank you SlashFM makers.
Halloween 2 from 1981, which I watched on Blu-ray. So every year in October, I have to watch Halloween 2. I know a lot of people watch the original Halloween. I have some friends that also watch the original Halloween, and I don't have any problems with the original Halloween. But for me personally, Halloween 2 is where it's at. And I think it's mainly just because when I was a child, I had Halloween 2 recorded on a VHS. It wasn't like the actual, store-bought release from the studio or anything. It was just a recorded VHS of Halloween 2. And I watched that thing so many times. And that's probably why, because I've seen it so many times that it's like a comfort watch for me, to be completely honest with you. So when it's October, the leaves are changing, Halloween's coming up, for me, it's Halloween 2. So obviously, I would definitely recommend this movie.
The Grudge 2 from 2006, which was also watched on Tubi and is now expired. That was really the only reason I put it on. I noticed that it had an expiry date, and actually, I think the only reason I ever even wanted to watch it was because Teresa Palmer was in the cast, and I'm a big fan of hers. She wasn't in it a whole lot, so whatever. It's certainly not a very good movie. It's not very memorable. It's definitely more of the same, with the white-faced, long black hair woman and the little boy that meows, I think he's doing, or I'm not sure what that sound he's making is supposed to be. I think Amber Tamlin's acting was serviceable. This just is what it is. I don't really recommend it. Maybe if you like the original Grudge American remake, you are bored, you could check this out. House LLC from 2015, which although I own the director's cut on DVD, I just watched on Shudder because it popped up on there. I've seen the original version of House LLC multiple times before purchasing the DVD and seeing the director's cut. It was cool to watch the director's cut again and see the extended moments that I don't have completely ingrained in my memory like I do the rest of the movie. I have also talked about House enough. I watch it every single year in October, if not even more frequently than that. I just remember the first time I watched it, I was alone in the dark and it really creeped me out. Honestly, it still does. I don't get a lot of movies that legitimately scare me or give me an uneasy feeling, but this one does that, even though I've seen it so many times. I very highly recommend this movie. I can tell from things like Letterboxd and conversations with others that I probably like it way more than most people do, but if you haven't seen this, please watch it. I do not think parts 2 and 3 are worth your time, and they just released a 4th film on Shudder. All I can say is that this original film is amazing and the sequels are not.
The Return of the Living Dead from 1985, which I watched on Blu-ray. So this is another film that I just love to watch during the month of October every single year. And I think also because we watched Return of the Living Dead 2, I said, I really want to watch the first one again. It's been probably a year now since I've watched it, so it's time. So I know I've talked about this movie on the channel before, so I'm not going to go too far into it, but this movie is a classic. If you have not seen it, you need to see it immediately. So what I will talk about is the Blu-ray copy that I have. I'm pretty sure it's Scream Factory. Don't hold me to it. There was a close to 2-hour documentary about just the making of this film and everything that went into it. And they had a lot of the actors from the movie in this documentary. And I really thought it was a well put together documentary. I've never watched it before. I did watch it over the course of 2 nights, but it was really fun just to see everybody talking about the movie. And there was a lot of interesting facts and things that I didn't know about that they talked about. I also just have, just a little bit more of appreciation of this movie because learning that it could have been a completely different movie, not only a different director, but also just a different story and everything. It's crazy. So just gives me a little bit more appreciation for the film. And if you're watching this and you do collect physical media like us and you have this version of the Return of the Living Dead Blu-ray and you haven't checked out that special feature, go watch it. You're going to like it. If you don't, I don't know how else you could watch it other than this Blu-ray. Not sure if you're into physical media or not, but another perk of physical media. But that being said, go watch this movie. It's fucking awesome.
WNUF Halloween special from 2013, which was watched on a Terrorvision special Blu-ray that was just released in 2023 with a vintage ad variant slipcover. I'm looking at the website right now. That release of this Blu-ray is limited to 2,000 units, and it currently says they have 555 left in stock. So if you like this movie and you're interested in getting it on Blu-ray, or you love it so much you want the special slipcover, you can actually just get the slipcover by itself too. I am not promoting or associated in any way with Terrorvision. I actually follow a dude on Instagram who randomly posted about this movie being released by Terrorvision and just instantly went and purchased it because I have seen so many people talking about this movie for so many years and saying how amazing and great and wonderful it is. And I have to say I'm a little bit let down, especially because I quickly purchased this Blu-ray. I was like, I need to have this. I need to see this. I even was somewhat recently looking it up on Amazon and other places like that because it's not streaming anywhere and I just really wanted to see it. That's why when I saw the Instagram post, I immediately purchased it. I'm not saying it's a bad film, but I think the main reason that this is appealing to people is nostalgia. It's supposed to be a VHS tape that someone is watching. There's even parts with fast forwarding, which I have to quickly say the fast forwarding effect was super high pitched and kind of annoying. I wasn't a fan of that, but it's supposed to be a VHS tape of a news broadcast that occurred on Halloween in 1987. As someone that was born in the 80s, yes, this has a lot of nostalgic appeal to me, but other than that, I just didn't really see the appeal and high praise that this film gets. I understand that it probably took a lot of effort to make this film, all the commercials, come up with all the ideas for the commercials, everything, and I appreciate that, but I guess I was just expecting so much more based on all the hype this has received. As far as the part of the newscast where the newsman was live and all the spooky things was supposed to be going on in the house, it was so underwhelming. Also, some of the commercials visuals started repeating. I don't necessarily regret buying it. I just can't see myself rewatching this as often as I was hoping I would want to when I bought it. If you've never seen it, I do recommend it. I just personally don't see a lot of rewatch value in it. If I can get my hands on the sequel somehow, I would watch it. So I think that says something. But I'm probably not going to go out of my way to buy it on Blu-ray after the experience that I had watching this one. So I'm really sorry for any WNUF fanatics and lovers out there. I definitely liked it. I just didn't like it as much as I was hoping to.
The House's October Built from 2014, which I watched on Blu-ray. Again, just another movie I love to watch every year around Halloween. I think I watched this just days before the actual Halloween date. And I just love this found footage, like let's go to haunted houses and everything. And just the way that this movie ends, not going to give anything away, but I just love the ending of this movie. They did make a sequel. I do not recommend the sequel at all. Do not watch it. Stay away from it. I feel like it ruins the ending of this movie completely. So I avoid that movie like the plague. I do not own it. It's like Spiral to me. It doesn't exist. But I highly recommend this movie. Go check it out.
The Lost Boys from 1987, which was watched on Max. Again, I own this film on multiple formats because it is one of my all-time favorite movies, but sometimes streaming is just easier, right? If it's right there in your face and you go, oh, cool, I'm gonna watch this. So anyway, I've seen this movie a million times as well. I love it so freaking much, and I actually have not watched it in an extended period of time. I'm not sure the last time I did. All I know is I forgot how freaking awesome it is. In addition to that, I recently watched Good Bad Flicks' YouTube video about this, and it was so interesting. I found out things I didn't already know and loved rewatching it with that knowledge. So thanks to him for making that, and thank you, Joel Schumacher, for all of the hard work and fighting that you did to get this made and get it made the way you wanted, because it turned out super duper amazing. I love this film and I very, very highly recommend it. Abandoned from 2022, which was watched on Hulu. I literally only wanted to watch this because it has Michael Shannon in it. He is one of my all-time favorite actors. I just adore him, and I will watch pretty much anything with him in it. He is not in this very much, but he acts his ass off, as always, when he is. Other than that, this movie was depressing and frustrating. I almost didn't want to even talk about it on here because there's so much to talk about in October, and it didn't feel like a horror film to me. It felt more like a drama, and I'm not sure why one of the genres is horror. But regardless, here we are. Basically, the Emma Roberts character has just had a baby and she has postpartum depression. There are many indications that she had mental health issues even before having the baby, because things from her past are discussed but never clarified or elaborated on. I think the film was well made and well acted. I just was very irritated by the way a lot of the people were treating the Emma Roberts character. I don't really feel like it's even a horror movie. So do I recommend it? No, not really. Sort of wish I just fast forwarded the Michael Shannon parts. But because I am a very heartfelt and sensitive person, this did sort of hit me a little bit in the feels, which is the only reason I didn't rate it super low. It's just that for horror purposes, and really just in general, I don't really recommend it. Halloween Ends from 2022, which was watched on Peacock. I don't know why I have just been wanting to rewatch this movie since I saw it in the theater. This is another movie that I can't really explain why there's something about it that I can't forget. There's something about the feel of this film. I don't have words for it, so I apologize. I know for a fact that I like it way more than the majority of people do. This is sort of an Exorcist situation, not only because of the whole David Gordon Green thing, which by the way, I am not trying to talk up David Gordon Green. In all honesty, I wouldn't say that I'm a fan. I either like a movie or I don't. I like this movie. Everyone's entitled to their opinion. Not only does it feel Halloweenish to me, but it also reminded me of Twin Peaks a little bit. The relationship between Allison and Corey. Yes, it's a little bit rushed and nonsensical, and it's clearly there to drive certain plot points, but it doesn't bother me, and that's all I have to say. So me personally, yes, I recommend the movie because I like it. I'll just leave that at your discretion. Trick or Treat from 2007, which I rewatched on my DVD. I think this is the perfect Halloween movie, even though I've seen it so many times. Every time I watch it, I am blown away by how flawlessly this film weaves all of the stories. It's just so perfect. I love this movie with my whole heart. I really couldn't go a Halloween or an October without watching this. And I love Lil Sam so much. Could not recommend this movie more. If you haven't seen it, you are totally missing out. If you don't like it, I really don't understand you. We are on different planets here. Love you, Sam.
So on the night of actual Halloween, I had to do a double feature. This was part one of my double feature. This was Trick or Treat. This movie is a classic and I cannot recommend it anymore. It's so awesome. So if you have watched this movie once or even twice and you're just like, I don't get it. Why is everybody so over the moon with this movie? Give it another chance. Let some time go by and watch it again. Because honestly, I think I watched it for the first time not too long after its initial release, and I wasn't thrilled with it. I think I would probably be like a 3 out of 5 or something like that, you know? But then over the years, just letting time go by and then coming back to it just gave me a new appreciation for it. And there were little things that I didn't notice the first time around. And I said, you know what? I didn't really care for this the first time I watched it, but shit, this movie's awesome. So it is a 5 out of 5. Check it out. Halloween 3 Season of the Witch from 1982, which I watched on Blu-ray. This was the second film in my Halloween night double feature. Halloween 3 is another must-watch for me around Halloween time. I absolutely love Halloween 3. I know it has nothing to do with any of the other Halloweens. It's just this movie is so awesome. I don't even care that it has nothing to do with the other movies. There's just so many things about this movie that are just awesome. And I love masks. I love mask making. I wish I knew how to make masks or sculpt my own masks, but I'm just not that artistic when it comes to that type of things. Seeing the factory and seeing them making the masks and just everything with the masks being evil and, you know, weird shit's gonna happen to you if you wear this mask and you watch this commercial. Like, it's just so cool to me. Also, the music in this movie, come on. Say what you want about Halloween 3 and it having nothing to do with Michael Myers, but the music is still done by the legendary John Carpenter. So it still has that John Carpenter feel to the movie, even though it's not directed by him. You can tell that, you know, his presence is there and it's awesome. And it's on Tubi, so go check it out.
Good Old Murder Party from 2007, which I rewatched on my DVD. Are you sick of hearing me talk about Murder Party yet? Well, here I am talking about it again because I've seen it a million times and I'll watch it a million more. I watch it every single October, if not even more than that. Will never tire of this, still laugh at it, still super entertained throughout. This movie is perfect in my opinion and I could not recommend it more. Please watch it if you haven't seen it. It's amazing. Hey, I'm a broken record. Terrifier, 2016, rewatched on DVD. Here we are, Art the Clown. I'm obsessed. Whatever, it is what it is. This movie blew me away when I first watched it. I've seen it a bunch of times. I'll watch it a bunch more times. It's short, and if you like gore, it's sweet. I think a lot of people's main complaint with this film is that it's no substance, but what slasher really does have too much substance? You know what I mean? This is the root of a possibly supernatural crazy slasher person going around doing crazy shit. If you want more than that, don't watch this. But I just don't understand how you could be a fan of Michael Myers or Jason Voorhees or really even Freddy and hate Art the Clown. I hate clowns. I have since I was a kid. I had an experience with a clown when I was really little. I don't remember if it was at a circus or at like an Ice Capades thing. It was just something my parents took me to. And ever since then, I was scared of clowns. But guess what? I love Art the Clown. And I think that says everything. As always, we thank you so much for watching. Leave us a comment if you have any horror movie recommendations and we will add them to our watch list. Until next time.